there. We're going to set up a redirect to Mark Reed's channel, so you can join us over there. I will be co-hosting with Mark over at his channel, and we have a lot of content. Last night, since the debate got moved to today, it got postponed, we improvised a stream with Dr. J in which we managed to reach 10,000 subs, and it was amazing. I did a dork dance. It was fun all around. And next week we have also series that is going to continue because everyone seems to be loving the Reschooling Flat Earthers series. And on Wednesday, the Tell Me That Story show, we're going over curiosities in Norse myths. So I have a very special chat prepared for you. And we're going to cover maybe a few things that you probably didn't know about the Norse myths. So, welcome, Tyler, to the stage. I hope everything's going okay. You haven't been around, but good to see you. And today, we have the proposition of secular humanism against the Islamic ethics, Sharia law, and such. We are all quite familiar with what that means. And I'm going to start by asking Isa, how do you think this is going to go down?
Well, I mean, I have certain predictions. I know Hussein quite well, and I know Mark Reed. I like both of them. They're good friends of mine from the internet landscape. I think what is going to be addressed is basically kind of where do we get morality from? So do we get morality from God, or do we get morality from ourselves? How do we know? I think that this is going to be the kind of the big conversation. And how do we know what is the best for society? I think what Hussein's going to argue is going to be that Islam has a kind of structured, guided practice that has existed, has been tested in society. And, you know, I think he can argue about that secular humanism does not necessarily have, you know, there's not a lot of evidence of what a secular humanist society looks like. So that might be something that would be argued. And I think Mark Reed could argue that, well, you know, looking at modern day Islamic societies, they don't seem to be extremely functional. So how could Sharia be really good for society? So I think that that would be kind of counterpoint of different things that I imagine in the debate.
Very, very interesting take. Thank you so much. And Tyler, what do you think? Give us an overview of what you think is going down tonight with this debate.
Sure. I mean, I don't know what Mark knows about Islam, but I've seen the quality of Hussein's arguments on this channel and during other debates, and I think he's just going to embarrass himself in the position of Islam again. And I think a lot of people are going to be abandoning Islam, and it's great to see that happen. The more people know about what Islam is and how intolerant it is, the better off the rest of us are for everyone just abandoning it. It's a terrible idea. It needs to be antiquated. It belongs in a museum. I don't see why anybody would perpetuate that nonsense in this day and age. So it's I hope Mark calls him on it, and that's the only way I can see that Mark could lose is if he's just afraid of the consequences of speaking out against how terrible it is. So it's that's kind of what I predict.
All right, thank you very much. And we have a couple of comments from our lovely audience. Huhaman says, based on the combo the other day, I think it will be interesting. At least I do share that sentiment. And Tim says, Tim Rob, Hussein is gonna trounce dear Mark. Would you mind clarifying what you mean by this? Because I'm not sure. And in regards to what you said, Tyler, Tim Rob also says, Tyler, it has the opposite effect. And that on a certain level, I kind of also agree with that too. Sometimes these debates only cement people's view of what they already have, but I don't know. It's a weird topic. My biggest contention with maybe not the topic, but Islam itself is this idea of not being able to criticize Islam publicly, the apostasy laws. I think, at least to me, they make Islam look very weak in the fact that, at least on paper, if it happens in reality, and it's been happening less and less, that people get killed because of apostasy laws. It makes a position look really weak. The fact that you're not able to criticize it publicly. I think that's a very very big problem when your position takes that stand that, oh, you cannot criticize me public. I think that's a real show of weakness, and it has happened in the worst regimes that I can think of, that criticizing the ruler or the regime uh, would get you bad consequences. Um, is either of you familiar? And for the audience, before I do that, for the audience, if you want to join the stage, you can click on the StreamYard link. It's pinned to the top of the side chat. And we already have Dr. Jerry. Welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Really good. Just getting started. Do you want to give us an overview of what you think is going to happen with the debate? And I'll make the question I was thinking after you do that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. I think it should be interesting. It's a little more, it's somewhat practical as far as trying to say what's, kind of a good way to do things. Maybe they'll get kind of in the weeds of arguing over historical and, who's really secular and who's the real Muslim and so on. And that might not be too fun if they get too sort of in the weeds on that stuff. But
Mhm.
I'm optimistic it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, me too. I have high hopes for this one. So the question I want to ask everyone in the panel right now is: do you know what is secular humanism? Have you read the manifestos? Have you heard other debates on the topic? And let's start with Isa.
Well, I kind of debated this with Mark Reed, funny enough, and I debated this with Matt Dillahunty. So I think I know a little bit about secular humanism, and my family's secular humanists too. My mother's family are secular humanists also. So yeah, I kind of come from a background of that. Um, yeah, I think I don't know if you would just say that the manifestos are the complete representation of secular humanism. Just like any philosophical perspective, I think that that is one kind of denomination of understanding secular humanism. And my understanding is it basically is kind of a non-religious way of life that promotes humanism, that promotes humanity. I think that's like the best way to kind of just, you know, put it in the most simplistic terms.
All right. Thank you very much. Tim? Tyler, I'm sorry, Tim.
Oh, that's
Sorry,
okay. I've
my
been
fault
called far
for
worse. um, I've seen other debates on the subject. I've seen Dillahunty talk a lot about it. I've seen Mark Reed talk a lot about it. It seems like a good idea. I got the pro humanism in my profile there for everyone to see. That's certainly the position that I would take. It seems that it's modeled off after human rights, right? Like everybody is an individual, and we should be celebrating the individual and the unique individuality and the characteristics of people on a case-to-case basis, instead of just putting people in piles according to their demographic and treating them accordingly. And so it certainly falls in line with my own personal value system, which is modeled after my country's value system. I live in Canada. We have the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Canadian Constitution Act, and I think there's one more. I think there's three, and I'm always forgetting one. But in any case, it's certainly, I think, the better position to hold, and I'd be surprised what anybody could possibly argue against it. It's certainly led to a massive boon in quality of life and technological progress over the years. And the closer we get to a secular humanist society, I feel the closer we get to a utopia, something that even religious people would. I'd be hard pressed to see them disagree that it's the concept of heaven on earth, really, where everybody is allowed to be themselves, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right. And what's your take on the question, Dr. J?
Yeah, I'm familiar with secular humanism. I've read the manifesto. I hope that at the beginning of the debate, Mark will say, like, yes, the manifesto, good with all of it, or make a few little nuances, or we're really clear on what he means by secular humanism. So I'll find that to be valuable if he would kind of define that for us in his mind, or how it works in his mind.
All right. And when I think of secular humanism, the first thing that comes to mind is that debate from DebateCon with Matt Hanti and Andrew Wilson. Uh, I don't know why. That's what I first thought. It's like that was something. And but yeah, I agree with we're all along the same lines, and the idea that secular humanism would still allow for people to have their own religions and to have their own practices without um, inconveniencing everyone else, and the benefit of all humans, that would also be paramount in the secular humanist paradigm. And the other thing I wanted to ask before we move into giving our overview of the Islamic ethics and the Sharia, I think that even the secular humanist ideals can be extended to our treatment of non-humans. So animals, and I'm not advocating for veganism, but at least like the idea of these animal factories, and try to have them be treated the most humanely we could. I think that could also be put in there, but I think that that's maybe because I come from a country where animals, we have a lot of countryside and animals are there grazing, and yeah, we eat them, but at least they're treated and they live a little bit better than in some other countries. Simos, welcome to the stage. How's your weekend going? Do you want to give an overview of your idea of secular humanism?
Yep, sure. I don't know what it means. Don't know what that means, secular humanism. It doesn't make any sense. Humanism seems to be saying we should take all views into account, not not excluding religious views. I think they're just as important. So don't really understand why these two terms are conflated that way. I kind of do understand it. Hello, Spooky. Good to see you, mate. I do understand it in terms of like trying to exclude, I don't know, the motivation of God, maybe from humanism, from some ethical standards, but I can't see that as being, it's not humanistic as far as I'm concerned. Right? Yes, we shouldn't say, like the idea of humanism is to say that humans should be the focus of our ethics. But I wouldn't exclude any human from that, just on the basis of whether they have a religious motivation or not. I don't think that makes any sense. So I'm not sure what work secular is doing here, is what I'm saying. And yeah, that would be my personal view on it. I've got something to say on Islamic ethics as well, but we'll get to that shortly.
Yeah,
I dare say.
that's the next question.
Yeah.
Before that, does anyone have anything to say about my idea of extending these secular humanist values to our treatment of animals?
I think it would be really hard to be consistent.
In what sense?
Do animals have land rights?
No, but I mean, as in
I
when
think they
we're
do. Yes.
raising them to eat them, at least give them, not give them like for example, the feedlots, the places that have feedlots for the cows, where they're just like in a tiny pen and they're there like being fed all day,
Yeah, but
so they get fat.
we wouldn't say that if we put humans in a feedlot and then treated them, relatively nicely and then ate them at the end, we wouldn't say that's okay. So I have a hard time suggesting that that's an extension of human rights to animals.
No, fair enough.
Yeah, I think I'd agree, but that doesn't mean that we should mistreat animals. I think that can be compatible with humanism. That
Almost
humans
a step.
are compassionate by nature, and therefore they can extend compassion to other living things. But obviously, the focus is on the ethical treatment of humans.
Ember sent us a message, and I think this is addressed to you, Simons. Secular isn't without religion, it's aside from religion, i.e., we all work together. And this is kind of very clear in contrast to what the Sharia would do, which is have the religion be setting the rules, at least the baseline for the rules, and then we have all the jurisprudence around it. But I think that's and it's also in stark contrast to the history of religious rule in many countries. So let's go around and talk a little bit about
Could I just answer that?
Yes,
Because
sure.
I still think all of that sentence is contained just within humanism. Nothing to do with secular. I don't see what work secular is doing there at all. And if somebody says, look, God says we should, we're here to be, I don't know, thou shalt not steal, and that comes from the Bible, and that's why we should do it. Well, I agree we shouldn't steal. That's still within humanism. So I don't mind if somebody has a different motivation. What I do mind is if they say, oh, well, we shouldn't, we shouldn't blaspheme, right? Because that isn't putting humans at the center. So I think blasphemy is perfectly acceptable, right? Because God is not at the center, it's humans that are at the center of this ethics. So that's what I mean by it. Now, if the attempt is to say secular means not, blasphemy shouldn't be a law in this one example, then again, I'm not sure what secular is doing there. Everything is encompassed by humanism. So I'm just.
Have you read any
confused.
of the manifestos?
Not for about 20 years.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
To be honest,
Hard to keep them in mind.
I've been a humanist all my life, right? As far as I'm aware, there's another word for it, isn't there? Which I found out the other day, which is I'll go and find it again. But there's another word which I didn't realize that I've been calling humanism.
I
I'll try and find it now. But anyway, carry on with the show.
All right. So we're going to get started with Isa. What can you tell us about Islamic ethics and Sharia? Your sound is not coming through, Isa. No, you're still muted. Sorry. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Tyler for a second while we get Isa back. What do you know about Islamic ethics and Sharia, Tyler?
A lot. I've been studying Islam for about 10 years now. Some of the higher points, or I guess I should say lower points, is that as far as I know, Islam is the only religion that encourages rape of sex slaves, and therefore it encourages sex slavery. It's in my mind not an ethical religion. One of the the big issues of contention, and I've had this discussion with a lot of Muslims, is they believe it's a religion of peace because, as they say, someday Islam will take over the world. And when the flag of Allah flies over every nation, then the world will be at peace. Now, I take issue with that statement because until that day, Islam is fundamentally a genocidal cult. And I don't think that there's much ethical foundation there to be found. It's kind of an issue. I've seen former Muslims, especially former Muslim women, speak out against the atrocious treatment that they're given by Muslim men and things of that nature. I've seen what their opinions are regarding the LGBT community. The question, what do you know about Islamic ethics and Sharia? I would say it's not very ethical. I mean, modeling a person's life after the values of a 7th century caravan bandit is not going to be very ethical by modern standards. And my fear is that if someday Islam did take over the world and every nation was an Islamic nation, that there would just be more fighting, kind of like what we see throughout the Arabian Peninsula, Muslims fighting other Muslims over interpretations. And I don't see how it could ever be a religion of peace. It's just such a poorly conceived religion, and I think it's just going to create far more problems. I mean, how does one equate the Sharia to these modern times? Should we just give up all the technology and live exactly like Muhammad lived, or do we make concessions where we keep the technology because that's how they were able to take over the world, by embracing the new things and then discard the rest? There's just far too many problems. And I think as far as ethics are concerned, it's their version of ethic is certainly my version of malevolence. And that's why I've been so outspoken on the subject. Thank you.
All right. Jeff C says,
can you hear
no.
me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Jeff C says, no, Islam is not a genocidal cult, and I would tend to agree. It may have its ups and downs, but I wouldn't call it genocidal. So, Isa, give us your view on Islamic ethics and Sharia.
I respect Tyler, but I'm gonna take a very different point of view on this. It's a little hard to hear those things. I've been in spaces where I just keep hearing Islam is these horrible, evil, terrible people, but the Muslims that I'm around, I don't see these terrible, horrible people. I see a lot of really good, noble people. Is there complexity in history? Sure. I think Islam, it's not just a monolith, and it's just the same as any religion, Christianity, Judaism. There's complex things that we can see in all the faiths. And I don't think, and this is actually what I debated with Apostate Prophet. I really didn't want to just go and say, hey, I'm going to go into what this thing is called Sharia. I don't even know what that really means, because there isn't some monolithic perspective of what Sharia is. You can say praying 5 times a day, doing fasting, giving alms. We can call that Sharia too. But it's this idea, when we think of this word Sharia, we think of this concept of conquest, assault, and I don't think that's a helpful way to look at Islam. Are there Muslims that do this? Are there Muslims that interpret the Quran in this way? I say yes, for sure. I'm not going to deny that. Are there things in the text that are what we consider complex for a modern audience? For sure. But every religious text has that. And I don't think it's really fair to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Are Sufis these like horrible, malevolent people? Are most like Sunnis and Shias? I in America, I don't see these horrible people. I mean, there are people that take very intense perspectives, but I think there should be other variables that are looked at as to why they might be doing these things. I think that's important. But to just hear that they're all genocidal maniacs, I think is it's hard to hear that. It's hard to hear that. And I don't think that the sources have to be interpreted that way. They can be. Look at Pastor Anderson. He interprets the text of the Bible in a very intense way. But I wouldn't say that is the biblical, that he is the arbiter of the text. He is an arbiter. And there are Muslims that are arbiters that have violent interpretations, but that is not the reflection of the entire Islamic tradition. So that's my perspective. I can tell you that Islam in the Quran, it talks about helping the orphan, it talks about helping the poor, it talks about giving alms, it talks about in the even the Hadith tradition, it talks about having adab and akhlaq, which is good character and good manners. And there are a lot of Muslims who follow those things too. So I mean, there are complex things because there is historical context for a lot of these things, and some people, you know, take those things now and that's their interpretation. So I think that shouldn't be the whole view of Islam, but that should be those people that are put into consideration. And it's the same thing. There are people that do bad things and they will take good things and manipulate them to do bad things. So I think we need to put that as a consideration in this conversation.
Yeah, and you can find all those people in every aspect of society, in every kind of religion, political views. There's bad people everywhere. That's just the way it goes. Isa Tim says Isa is a lone Muslim in the wilderness of reason. So thank you for your words,
Hussein is a
Tim.
good guy too. Hussein is a good guy too. I talk to him all the time. He's a solid base dude. So, you know.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. J.
I think it's going to be really important for Hussein to define what he means by, Muslim ethics. And I know that would be boring because it could take up a decent amount of time. But, as someone who knows how complicated religious stuff can be, Mark might be fighting against somebody else the whole time. And so we want to make sure that they're fighting each other and not just whatever Mark decides Islam is. And so I think really good, solid definitions are super important. Now, if you were with us last Monday night when we talked about how to set up a society, I did not agree with Hussein and how he would do it at all. I thought it was not great. So Issa and I think would agree. So even Issa and Hussein are not in the same boat on how to do that. So I think Hussein really describing what he thinks so that they can, make sure they're comparing the right things together. It's just if you, as the secular humanist, go in and try to take the most uncharitable version of Islam you can, no one's going to find that. If you're an Islamist person, you're not going to find any of that reasonable, right? You're like, oh well, he's just, it's like just saying like all Christians want to crusade everybody. It's like maybe, but I don't think so. So anyway, I think really good definitions on what Hussein thinks is going to be really important. But based on what I do know of what he thinks, I think it's going to be hard to defend, in my opinion.
Yeah, he has the hardest position tonight. And Simons.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, okay. So it's almost the same thing I'm going to say again that I said about secular humanism being a kind of secular being redundant there. I think ethics and Islamic morals are kind of going to be redundant here. If we just look at ethics alone, then of course we can all find common ground, as he's so perfectly demonstrated. There are passages about good conduct, but if we're going to say that this is an Islamic ethic because it's written in the Quran, then I think we're justified then to point to other things that are written in the Quran which disagree with humanism. And I think that's where the debate will be. I'm not keen on this particular title, like I'm generally not keen on debate titles because they're very difficult to get into a succinct enough form that there is a conversation which actually matters. And I think there'll be a lot of cross talking in this one, basically because of the word secular and because of the word ethics, which are just, not favorable to a good debate. Right? Hussein can just point to this. Well, what does secular do for humanism? That's not a moral. That's not an ethical position to hold. If you're excluding someone's just motivation for why they should act in a particular way, that's a nonsense, because morality is clearly based upon motivation. I mean, that's intentions are half the battle. So that's one way of attacking Mark, I think. Likewise, Mark can take the Islamic side and just say, as I said, look, here's this book. If you're calling ethics what's written in this book, then where are you drawing the line about what is metaphorical and what is literal? Same problem we have with fundamentalist Christians as well, right? They don't believe in things like homosexuality for as a freedom right. I would say, well, that's part of human nature, and therefore it's covered under humanism, right? And just because it's written in a book that people don't think that you have to deny somebody's human status in order to find an objection to it. So I think I think there's going to be a lot of cross talking past each other,
Yeah, that's
and
the one thing I'm
a lot
afraid
of
of.
a lot of movement of the goalposts when somebody attacks you, say Hussein on, some of the more what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the more rigid and seemingly literal statements made in the Quran about such subjects as homosexuality, then I think that those goalposts can be quite easily moved by referring to other passages which talk about, the ease of, good character, or even there is no compulsion in religion, right? Which is an oft quoted passage out of the Quran,
Yeah.
which doesn't seem to reflect the nature of the Islamic world as a whole, as far as I can see. So I think there's a lot of dangers here, which unless both parties are apt to agree not to talk about them, then I think we'll be forever circling around the horse of discontent.
All right. Thank you
If
very
that's a
much.
Shakespearean quote, I don't know.
My view on this is that the staunch negative to evolve because of some of the baseline beliefs that the Quran is the literal word of God and has been conserved through the years, and that gets us into a problem that we cannot move into the future if we're still trying to legislate people's lives based on 7th century Arabia. And I would commend that Christianity has done great strides in doing exactly that, in adapting to the times. For the most part, there's obviously some sects that refuse to even get a blood transfusion, for example, and they will literally die. So just so to keep up their religious belief, which I find extremely weird. But when we're talking about the new issues of the world today, for example, there's no way we can derive the ethics or the morals of AI if we ever manage to get something close to sentience with AI. So it gets a little bit into a murky territory, and that refusal to get on with the times. And on the one hand, they sometimes claim they accept science, but then it gets a little bit tricky with the stuff that's written in the Hadith, for example. And most of us share here that these books are not scientific in nature, that they're more of a spiritual guidance. So yeah, it gets a little bit tricky when it comes to adapting the religion of Islam to the new world, the 21st century world we live in today. So we're going to go around and give our predictions. We are on the final stretch for the time, so let's make sure everyone gets a chance to give their predictions for the debate tonight, and we're going to start with Isa.
I wanted to add one thing too. I'm sorry about certain things. Again, I think we treat Islam like a monolith. Like we keep saying Sharia, and we keep saying there's so many different thought processes in Islam. Islam is complex. It is nuanced, and I just think we need to grant that. There's rational thought process in Islam, like Mutazilite, Ashari, Mutaridi. I'm just saying these things exist, so it's not like just a Wahhabi Salafi, festival. I just want people to know that. So like that's important. My prediction for the debate. Well, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think it's gonna be like what I said. So it just depends on where you're at. I think people are kind of sold on where they're at. So if you're a secular humanist, that's going to be the narrative that's going to be for you. And if you're taking like an Islamic or more of a theistic perspective, there's probably going to be things that might be more appealing for you in that space. So, and I think that's how these debates are. It's not really, and I agree with Mark Reed on this. It's not really about winning, quote unquote. It's about sharing information and having a communication. And some people might be fence sitters and may have different kinds of ideas, but I think people are probably pretty sold on where they stand in this conversation.
All right. Tyler?
My predictions are, as I mentioned earlier, I think Mark is going to address every one of Hussein's claims. I'd be surprised if the word Islamophobic wasn't thrown out. For the record, I think Islamophilia is a far bigger issue than Islamophobia. And I can't wait for the after show. I can't wait to see us all again. I'm looking forward to this one, as I mentioned before. Thank you.
All right. Dr. J, predictions?
I think that Hussein should maybe attack human flourishing and say, you don't even know what this means. He can't even define it, right? So the aspect of not causing human harm, I think, is easy to put your arms around, but he may want to attack what Mark even means by human flourishing, because humans, I'm not even sure, agree with each other on what causes each of us to flourish in our own way. So maybe he'll go with that. But I think that Islam has a lot of baggage, and Mark will be able to attack that. So I guess I would see Mark probably coming out with this one. Though I will say, like, some of the Islamic debaters we've had have, given me some eye rolls, and Hussein doesn't do that for me. I like Hussein, and when I see his name on something, I don't kind of shake my head for sure. So I'm glad it's him, and hopefully we can have some more people from the Islamic community like him, and Isa, and so maybe some more Christians to help me out too. Because I think that Hussein's going to do a nice job, though. I think I'm going to lean that Mark's going to go ahead and take it. There's just a lot to attack on Hussein's side.
Yeah. Simon's predictions?
Okay. I tried to do my best to support you, Dr. J. You know that. I say that with my tongue in one side of my cheek, of course. But nonetheless, I agree with you. Hussein seems to be a nice guy. He seems to be he seems to have integrity and honesty when it comes to arguing his position. He argues what he believes, and it doesn't hide behind obfuscation or whatever, double talk, etc. And I think that that's a very good sign for a good debate between the two of them. I think this topic is going to be difficult to debate, and I think it will get hung up in the weeds relatively quickly, simply because there's too much middle ground. That's what I'm afraid of. There's too much middle ground between the two positions, and if Hussein decides to just tread in that middle ground, then I don't think any progress will be particularly made, and it would be difficult for Mark to lay a glove on Hussein, other than the one way I've said, which is to say, do you take all of the book or just some of the book? And if so, can you give me a how do you decide what's read metaphorically and what's read literally? It's the same argument I use against the Bible and particular Christians or fundamentalist Christians who like to think of some passages as metaphorical because they don't agree with their particular worldview, and some being, literal because they do agree with it. So I think that's where the the difficulty is going to lie. I don't think there is an answer to that question, by the way, just for the record, for exactly the same reason that Dr. J is saying about humanism. because there is no real answer to there's a grey area of what flourishing means and to whom and how far it should be taken, whether it's a group flourishing or an individual flourishing. That's a very difficult question to answer. So, yeah, I'm not sure that much progress can be made on a topic like this, let
All
alone
right.
pit them against each other.
Carrigold said, I'll bet Hussein brings up usury. That is highly probable, I think. And my prediction is that someone mentioned here, hold on, I lost the comment, that Mark needs to get his temper a little bit in check because he gets excited sometimes. And but yeah, I think that if he's been debating for a long time, and if Hussein doesn't pull some of the stuff, Mark gets riled up when people are like flat earthers are for the most part. So I think his temper will be in check today.
I
But
think
that's
dishonesty is where Mark gets a little riled. Other than that, he's perfectly fine.
yeah,
Someone starts
definitely.
being dishonest and changing their argument halfway through or
And
double talk,
and we're almost at the starting time, so I'm going to do some housekeeping and then we'll hang out until the debate begins. After we end the stream, you're going to be redirected to the debate straight, so you don't have to do anything. We're doing everything for you. So tomorrow, 7 p.m., we have part 2 of the conversation between Dr. J, Oz, and Hussein about what is the best society. And if you haven't seen part number 1, you have until 7 p.m. to catch up on that. It was an awesome conversation between the three. And just as a brief summary, Oz and Dr. J have been the ones that have lined up more in that conversation. And then Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Tell Me That Story show. We're going over curiosities of the Norse myths, and Oz still has to schedule his reschooling flat earthers for the week, but they will come up shortly. All right. Anyone? Oh, here I have a question for Isa. Iron Charioteer says, "Is Islam a capitalist religion?" Question for Isa.
I think it varies. I think this is the issue. I don't think there's just one side. I mean, you could take a socialist perspective and you can take a mercantile position. So I don't think there's just one side on this conversation.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to bring up a point before we go, before the debate starts?
I think the fact that we haven't talked as much about who's a better talker this time is a good sign, and that maybe we're more interested in the topic. We think there might be some substance here. I've thought a lot of more substance things than just who's going to be a better talker. That'll come in, right? Who's good at crafting their words and all that is going to matter, like it always does. But I feel like it's been fun to not have to lean on that as much. So I really am looking forward to this one. I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I feel that it's going to be good. I hope that the chat isn't too crazy with the insults. We've had a couple of debates in a row where the chat has been mild and only a handful of moderations here and there. But there was a chain before that it was insane, the amount of insults and craziness from the chat. So I hope it's calm in that sense. I have to work a little bit less in that regard. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I'm looking forward to this because I think both debaters are honest people and honest interlocutors, and therefore they are going to talk about the topic. It may take a while to get to the nub of the topic because there's, as I say, quite a wide gap in the middle there where they're both going to be able to just point to things within their own position which just agree with each other. So finding a disagreement is going to be a little more of a challenge than a lot of debates, but nonetheless, I think they're both honest enough to not try and deviate when one of them asks a question, I think that you're going to get an honest answer. And so it shouldn't be too difficult to get to those points of disagreement and talk about them in some substantive way. That's my hope, anyway.
No, thank you very much. So remember, we're almost going to start the debate. So as soon as we get that started, we'll end the stream. We'll be taking over. So remember to like, share, subscribe, check out our previous shows, check out our future shows, and the merchandise store. We have some lovely merch there for you with the logo, and it helps support the channel. Let's go around and give our quick final thoughts, and while we get this started, which should be starting any second now. Isa.
I'm excited. I like I said, I like both of these gentlemen. I love to see where Hussein is going to go with this conversation, because both Hussein and I have both engaged secular humanism. So I'm interested in seeing what his arguments are going to be. I think it's going to be fun. I'm familiar with Mark Reed because I already had a conversation with him, but I'm just excited, and I'm looking forward to the after show, and I think this is going to be really fun.
Yeah, reminder, the after show is going to be over at Mark Reed's channel. So Mark Reed, yes. Tyler, anything you want to say before we go?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. I hope we see Mark Reed and Hussein both during the after show. I'd still like to address Hussein's question to me that he sent my way the last time we were all together. And other than that, I definitely need to get some pre-debate setup happening, what with a washroom break and possibly a beverage. So I'm gonna leave you all with that, and I'll see you later. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, you too. Dr. J, anything else you want to bring up before we go?
Put in a strong advertisement for Monday, because it's a different format. There's no winners. No one can win on Monday when we talk about what we think is the best society. No one can lose. We don't have a real reason to try to, obfuscate our positions or make the other person look dumb or anything. At least I hope not. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to really nail down if we create this society together. And I think it's a better way to go for some things, because we can be a little bit more forthcoming. We're not trying to, put our best foot forward and hide things and so on and so forth. Because when you're in a debate, you're trying to win. And so I really think that people will enjoy that style, that you can learn a lot more. And it's just a different kind of thing. So I'm gonna put in a strong commercial for our Monday night thing. And we were planning it on a few hours, and we realized we'll never make it in that time. So,
but the previous conversation was pretty awesome, and I hope it continues that way, and maybe it can become a bit of a series and tackle different topics here and there. It was pretty awesome. Simons, something else you would like to say? We're
well,
8:05.
Final thought would be simply, I hope there is a little bit of heat in this debate, just because I always like to see Mark when he's actually just getting there, because he is a calm guy. So I hope there's a bit of heat in there, but nonetheless, apart from that, I hope that they, as I say, they find something to have a substantive disagreement about, and other than that, peace to the world from my humanist perspective, and may your God go with you.
All right, the debate has started, so we're going to end it here, and you'll be redirected over there, and we'll see you at the after show at Mark Reed's channel. I will be co-hosting with him. Thank you for being here, and remember to do the social thingies. Take care. Have a good night.